Welcome to this episode of the Gateless Podcast. Today, we sit down with Christine Rubin, who is the founder and creator of Mooi Social. She tells everything about her experience immigrating here as a 7-year-old from South Africa, what that was like, her journey into adulthood. And she always had little side hustles and side businesses that she created to make money. She shares with us how she began her journey in corporate at some really cool companies, leading influencer marketing for HSN and Ashley Home Furniture. And then her pivot into her entrepreneurial career, leading her own business, was immediately halted for a bit after a crazy experience, only 1 week into her being a full-time entrepreneur. She was so open, honest, and raw with us about how her experience growing up for a little bit in a completely different country and coming to the US as what made her feel like an outsider impacted her motivations, and she shares her why for doing what she does. This episode is for you if you have felt like an outsider in starting something new and want to overcome that. It's certainly for you if you're interested in getting started in influencer marketing, social media marketing, or just an entrepreneurial journey in general, and you're currently in corporate and are just looking for the confidence to make the leap. So with that, Christine, welcome to the Gateless Podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's so nice to be here and to finally get to meet
I
you.
know, I know. So before we get into all the details, will you just give our listeners a little bit of background on you and what you're doing in your business?
Of course. So, my name's Christine, and I'm the founder of Mooi Social. And I am a social media marketing agency that specializes in content creation, influencer marketing, and social media management. We also do workshops and trainings. So, some of my clients, I'll get with their teams quarterly, and I will teach them the latest updates on social media and just empower them with the tools to be able to create content on their own as well. And we are launching a template studio this year. So, really excited about that. And that's again just to help our clients as well, just empowering them with different tools to be able to take social media into their own hands. Because something that I've recently just started speaking into existence is there is no marketing agency that's going to show up for you 24/7, 7 days a week. And so I think a big part of, what I do is just educating and empowering people on how they can do things for themselves as well as hiring us to assist them and refine that process for them.
Very good. And how many years have you been in business?
I just celebrated my second year in business, January 1st. Thank you. My official second year in business. So I'm entering year 3 right now. But I've been freelancing my whole life. Like I always freelanced in college and even during corporate, I always was just like working with other businesses while I was like, kind of growing my business while I was running my corporate lifestyle.
So what was life like before you started Mooi Social? Mooi Social?
Mooi Social, and it's Afrikaans because I'm from South Africa, so, it means pretty, so I thought it was a good way to just, like, bring my heritage back into, my brand, and, life was kind of crazy before I started Mooi Social. As I mentioned, I was freelancing, so I was pulling, I was working 60, 80-hour work weeks. I was in a very high demanding corporate role. I was the influencer marketing manager for Ashley Home Store, so the last 2 projects I worked on before I left corporate was, recruiting 200 influencers from around the nation to LA for a John Legend, a concert. Yeah, that was one of the last, campaigns, and then the other one was, Neo's studio build out in Atlanta. So I, brought the whole team out there to come do a refresh of his studio, for interior design and stuff. So really big projects. And I was the lead. I was like the run of show. So not only was I the talent manager, working with the talent, recruiting the talent, working to get the deliverables scoped out for what kind of partnership we're running on the influencer side, but then also working internally with different teams to maximize that in terms of sponsorships, sweepstakes, just everything. So just like a really high demanding job. I mean, we would do build outs of entire event spaces and we would literally create like a 5-bedroom build out and furnish it and build all that furniture in one day and host a huge influencer event. And then the next day would be like breakdown and we would donate all that stuff. So, just like really demanding job. And then when I would come home from that, I would have to like get back to emails with clients. I'd have to like make sure all my posts are going out for my social media clients. I would have to, build the business. I think a lot of people forget to talk about that part of like building your own business takes so much time, not just like getting work and like doing stuff for other people, but like just building the foundation for your own business and setting things up is like a full-time job. And so I was kind of, definitely cutting the corners in some areas of building my own business, and that bit me in the butt in when I first started my company, but yeah, life was really busy. I was definitely at max like burnout when I finally quit my job to start Mooi Social.
So you were building Mooi Social for how long while you were still in corporate,
Um,
freelancing for corporate?
I mean, I guess you could say I was building Mooi Social since I like started college in 2014 because I got my first freelance client when I came to college. And then I just kept on adding to that roster of clients. And now I have had clients for 5 years, even though my business is only 2 years old officially. Like when I say we're in our second year of business or entering into our third year of business, we started our LLC officially 2 years ago. So that's what I call my business anniversary when I officially like became an LLC because before that I was just like an independent contractor. I wasn't like a real business, if you will. But PSA, you don't have to be a real business to start working for other people. And it was actually like, a big like smack in the face when I was like, oh my gosh, it's like so much harder now that I'm an LLC and like a real business. Like I should have just been freelancing until like forever. But it's definitely advantageous to become an LLC, but a lot more work, I would say.
So can you say more about how you were working with other businesses even when you weren't a real company? Like what were you doing and how did you start doing like how did you start getting clients?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of word of mouth, referrals because I was always into like social media content creation. Like everybody was always giving me the phone at their parties and being like, you take the photos, you do the content, you're good at this part. Like, so I think it was just always a natural skill for me and something that I enjoyed doing. So, um, come like, the last 10 years of growth in social media, and all of a sudden people are like, oh, well, I'll pay you to do it, because then I started realizing my time and how much it takes to create posts or reels or recaps or anything like that. I was like, I'm going to start charging for this. And so I did, but it was really just a lot of word of mouth referrals from even Haley. Haley gave me my first like official client back in 2019, and I'm still with that client today. Full service social media management. And now I do a lot more for them. We do like email marketing for them. We do the quarterly team trainings, content creation, like all the works. But yeah, it was really just like it kind of was a natural fit for me, and people started paying me to do something that I was already enjoying. And so I think when I started making it an official like business is when I started doing like true proposals. I was like, okay, well now I have to like see how many hours this takes me and like be legit and be like, okay, let me break this down, And I remember like my first social media management client, I think was like $450 a month. And I was like doing the same work that I now charge like $2,500 a month for. So I was doing like the most for like the least. And I just remember like trying to convince this client of how worthwhile her time was invested in me. And yeah, it was just, and now it's like there's so many people who realize the value of social media, and it's easy to get people on board nowadays. But, back in the day, I just remember like trying so hard to convince people that what I do is legit because most people, like, I go home for family holidays and people wouldn't believe that what I did was a career. They'd think that it was just for fun. I'm like, actually, guys, it's a lot, it's a lot of work. But the dialogue changed. Now I go home for holidays and everybody's like, hey, my business needs marketing. Can you help? Hey, next time you come, can we do like a one-on-one and you can talk to me about what I need for my social media? And like back in the day, 5, 6, 7 years ago, like what I did was just fun.
That's really interesting. So you started in a place where you were kind of creating demand for social media management and now you're absolutely servicing it because everybody gets it. Like it's not optional anymore. You have
Yeah.
to do it. You have to be good at it. You have to be relevant. Things change so quickly.
Yeah.
It's so much to handle. It's a specialized skill.
It really is. And I've been in it for a decade. I started at a small marketing agency as an intern in college, and that is what really like gave me the background in my career. I started doing like small campaigns for influencers. My role was digital marketing generalist. And so what that means in a marketing agency is you do everything. Yeah, yeah. I did, like, email marketing. I did, like, copywriting for, websites. I did, social media marketing. I did influencer marketing. I helped with events. I, like, cleaned the office. I, like, swept the conference room floors. I got lunches for meetings. Like, I cleaned up the coffee station. Like, I was a generalist role for sure, but that gave me a good opportunity to, like, really see what my passion was and what I really enjoy doing, and really was the backbone of, like, what I do today because I still do the same things I was doing then, and now I'm able to teach my team these different roles as well because, that generalist role is what every, like, business needs, like, for your business, for my business, like, I need email marketing, I need my website updated, like, I need to do social media marketing, I need to do influencer marketing, I need to do SEO for my company, like, I need to do all of these things that I learned when I was at that agency, and I was making like $5 an hour, working like 30, 40 hours a week while still being in school full time. And like, that was the reality back then. I think I have my tax return from that year and it was like $16,000 for what I was doing, and I was like paying for all my tuition and everything. But I knew back then, I was like, I am doing the work now so that later on it's gonna pay off, And now I feel like, people come in their first role and like graduate college and go into their first role and they're just like, I'm ready, put me in coach. And I'm like, it's gonna take some groundwork, it's gonna take some building, it's gonna take some years. So I think like, I can't encourage people enough to get that internship while they're in college because I got my first full-time job before I even graduated college at Home Shopping Network. And they didn't even know that I was still in school. They, like, hired me, gave me a full-time role. I just started doing online classes, going to school at 6 p.m. They didn't know I was still in college, and I was like, "You guys know I'm, like, graduating soon?" And they're like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah." I worked there for, like, over a year, and I was still in college, got a full-time job and, like, a big, like, corporate career.
How
So
did you do both? A full-time job and graduating college? You
oh,
must have had a lot of you must be a very organized person.
I am definitely a type A girly. I cannot deny that, and I'm also probably the one person who'll tell you I'm, like, an organized mess. Like, I'm a hot mess for sure. Like, everything is very much, the way that I need it to be, but to some people or, like, to my team, I'm always apologizing. I'm like, "Sorry, guys, like, it's all in my head," and that's been, like, the hardest part, but I think I was able to do both because I wanted to, Nobody was forcing me to do that. I just had the willpower to do it, and I think it always goes back to, like, I really enjoy what I do. Like, I have such a passion for it. I have a passion for seeing businesses succeed from using us for their marketing services. I have a passion for creating. I have a passion for doing stuff for my own company. It's been like just a desire of mine to be able to do what I'm doing right now for since I first discovered it. And that's been my driving force all along is like because I've wanted to do it. And, I reach burnout. And I definitely have hard days, but I always tell my husband, who's also an entrepreneur, I'm like, we're doing it to ourselves. We can stop anytime and go get a corporate job. And you know what? That's never an option for us. We're just like, absolutely not. We wouldn't trade what we do for the world. But it's something that I think I've always had the stamina to work extra hours and after hours and before hours because I wanted to.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Like, we've gotten the question before, what motivates you to hustle? Like, why are you both have full-time things that you're thriving in? Why start something new? Why have a podcast? Why start Gateless? And it's like, it actually doesn't feel like hustling. Yes, you are putting in a lot of hours, and
Yeah,
yes, you're sacrificing. Like, you're saying no to some things so that you can do double time in the work. But if
absolutely.
you want to be doing it and you feel like you're actually helping people, like, that's the fuel. That's sometimes all the fuel that you need.
Yeah.
You're making an impact.
Yeah, and I also think that, like, my personality type is, very generous in loaning me the energy I need in order to, like, powerhouse it out because I've done so many personality tests, like, in my lifetime, but there was one particular one that I did in college, and uh, it measured your, like, output rate, and mine was, like, the highest in all of my class. It was at, like, 85%, where everybody else's was, like there was one other guy's, and his was at, like, 70%, but then besides that, everybody else was, like, under 40%, and so I think I have a lot more to, like, give in terms of just, like, stamina and, like, wanting to, continue working instead of being like, "Actually, I'm just gonna close the computer and, like, watch TV," So I think that's something to keep in mind too, like, not everybody's personality is this way, and if that's not your personality, then, like, you'll make up for it in other ways,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So did you always know you wanted to work for yourself?
I did. Yeah. I always had an entrepreneurial spirit. When I was a little girl, my mom would go grocery shopping with me, and I would come home with groceries and create a new store in my bedroom. And she would have to like repurchase her groceries. And like, I would bring like the family in. I'd be like, everybody come to the candy aisle. Here's the fruit section. And like, my mom would literally have to like repurchase her groceries in my store in the bedroom after like just going to get her groceries at the grocery store. So I think I've just always had that desire, like, for more for myself, and to be able to have that control over my life. You know, I am a big believer, as much as I am like a powerhouse, always wanting to work. I am a big believer in balance and that work life balance. And, you know, having had like many years in corporate where I had very little balance in my life, I always had the end goal in mind of like, you know, I'm building it right now so that later on I can rest. And like, I don't have a family yet, you know, I just have my husband and myself, but you know, I do wanna be there for my kids, and I don't wanna work when I have kids. I wanna give them, like, a full 3 years of, like, "Hey, this is mom, and I wanna be here with you," and I'm not promising that I'm not gonna work in those 3 years, but I wanna be able to step away and take, like, the maternity leave that I wanna take, which is way longer than the maternity leave that any corporate job is gonna give me. But that's something that's really important to me because my mom was a workaholic and still is to this day, like, 7 days a week, she's, like, working on something, you know? And so I grew up not really having a mom who was present for my life. Like, she was never really, like, there for the sports games, and I was an athlete in high school and middle school. I was always doing sports, but my dad was showing up for those things, you know? My mom was always working, and, I was kind of, like, long to have my mom bring the snacks for soccer game. But, like, all the other kids' moms brought the snacks for a soccer game, but, you know, it also taught me hard work, you know, and I, like, saw that in my mom, and, you know, since therapy, I now understand that it's called modeled behavior. And my therapist was like, "Yeah, you, like, exhibit a lot of modeled behavior from growing up," you know, but that was something that, like, I was missing in my childhood as my mom was always working, and so I determined to create a lifestyle for myself that would allow me to be there for my kids, you know, one day when that time comes.
Do you Okay, so I'm curious to hear more about this. I think it's something, I mean, I think about it and I think a lot of people, especially listeners of the show, think about like, yes, building something that you're really proud of, and that takes a lot of time and effort that you have to put in the work to get it to a place where you can step away, but also with the motivation that like you want a family one day and you want to be able to model the behavior to your children. Like, you can build what you want and you can
Yeah.
have the life that you want, but also be present and be balanced. And
Mm.
it sounds like the through line for you is like ultimately you're chasing balance for one day in your life for now, but
Yeah.
also like when you have a family. I think it's an interesting thing to think about because it's like on one hand you want to show them you can do anything you want to do. You can create it from nothing. And it sounds like maybe your mom was trying to do that. I don't know if she's an entrepreneur or works in corporate, but like she worked a lot. And I don't know if it was a
Yeah.
conscious thought of like, I'm going to instill hard work. That was you got two things. I know
Absolutely.
how to work hard, but also like kind of wish mom was around more.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's just, I
And I'm
think that's
sure
a
she
really
didn't
hard
do that
balance. Of
intentionally, right?
course.
Like,
No.
and listen, there's so many benefits that came from that, you know? And, but I think like now looking back, she probably wishes that and we're from South Africa. So we immigrated here when I was 7. And so, and my mom was the breadwinner. She was the one who got the visa. She's a pharmacist. So, 20 years ago, they recruited her to come here and work. And my dad was actually not allowed to work. So he was like Mr. Mom, you know, with work visas and stuff. So he was taking care of me and my 2 sisters while my mom worked every day. And she had to support a family of 5 in a new country. And we started from scratch. You know, we came to the US with $500 and 10 suitcases and each other. And that was it. And so now, like 20 years later, it's so cool to see like how that really propelled us into what we're all doing today, you know? Me and my sisters, and now we're all like with our significant others. And my oldest sister has 3 girls, and the twins are turning 12 this month, which is kind of crazy. I'm like, wow, that's so wild that like our lives are so different from when we first arrived here in the USA. But I think, you know, a lot of her working really hard when we moved here was because she had to, you know, she had to support that family. And so for me, like, I really admire that. And she's my why. You know, people are like, why do you do what you do? And I'm like, my mom, you know, she's been my inspiration since day one. But and I just like want to give back to her, because I also feel like she's worked so hard her whole life, but like why is she still working? I'm like, Mom, go like on an island and have a vacation for the next 10 years. Like take a 1 year cruise. But that's just like not who she is today. And but I want to give that to her. I like want to give back to my family and like give them everything that they've worked so hard and sacrificed so much for.
That's amazing. What was it like to transition into a totally new country and culture at 7?
Oh, it was weird, man. America's wild. It's definitely very different from South Africa, which is also wild. And I actually just made my first trip back in June this year after 20 years of not going back. But I just remember being so like curious about if other kids are going to speak my language because we speak Afrikaans, but everybody else spoke English. And I was like, Mom, am I going to have friends who speak Afrikaans? And she's like, maybe, but probably not. So I think I was so young that there was just a lot of like wondering and curiosity. But when I actually moved here, kids made fun of me, they made fun of my family. We ate different food than they did. Like I was always embarrassed to open up my lunchbox because like my dad would have like cow tongue with like ketchup on like 2 pieces of white bread. And I would just be like, my friends would be like, look at my Lunchable. And I've got a cosmic brownie. And I'd be like, ooh, that looks good. I've got cow tongue with
Oh
like
my gosh.
ketchup, which is like really good, by the
Yeah,
way,
I bet.
but very foreign for most people. So I think there was just a huge culture shock. But I was the youngest, my 2 sisters are older than me. So I think for me, it was easier to settle in
Yeah.
to the culture here. And I'm definitely Americanized now. And my cousins in South Africa will confirm that. Because we just went back and they were like, you guys are the Americans. I'm like, no, we're always South African at heart. And they're like, you guys are the Americans. But yeah, it was a really big culture shock. And like, I also remember I was in school one day, like my parents had us in public school for like 30 days and I was learning English. I didn't know English. So my dad would like walk me to school and he'd do the days of the week and the months of the year with me and I'd like speak them and then I'd spell them. But there was one day in particular, like first 30 days here and I threw up at school and they brought in people in hazmat suits. Like a team of like 10 people came in like full hazmat suits to like come clean up my throw up because I was probably like this diseased kid that came from Africa. Yeah, so it was definitely a culture shock, and kids would ask me like, "Oh, do you guys have like cars? Do you have toasters?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're like a civilized country. Yeah, it's a third world country. There's lots of areas that are not civilized, but like I lived in a house and we drove a car and we had cell phones and like we had a McDonald's. And everybody was just like mind blown that there's like this foreign country that exists that's Africa and there's like this white girl that's coming from there because a lot of other people are like, if you're from Africa, why are you white? And I'm like, well, because are you Indian or Native American if you're from America? Because those are the indigenous people there. It's like, and then you grow up and you're like, wow, if only people knew back then what they said.
Mhm. Did you have an feeling of being an outsider? You don't seem to carry that right now, but like we haven't gotten too into it yet. I'm like, how has
Yeah.
that stayed with you or
Yeah, I mean, I definitely felt like an outsider when we first moved here. I just and when I first became an entrepreneur, I felt like an outsider. I was like, this is lonely. But I definitely felt just different. And kids made me feel that way too. Like they reinforced that I was different. I had an accent back in the day. I don't have one anymore. But they definitely like let you know, like, hey, you are different and like you are an outsider. And I just took like years to kind of settle in. And I think, like, my oldest sister, she probably had it the hardest. She did have it the hardest.
was she in like middle school or high school?
Yeah, she was 14.
Okay.
So, like, that's, like, prime I wouldn't wanna be 14 moving to a new country, you
Kids are
know?
mean, but teenagers are probably more
Yeah,
mean.
yeah, and, like, my family was so poor too, like, we didn't have anything cool, back in the day, so, like, not only were kids mean, it's like they always pick on the kids who have the least too, and so, it's just taught me a lot now to have open eyes when I look at anybody and everything in this world, it's like you just never know what somebody's going through behind the scenes or what they've gone through to, like, be here. But yeah, I was definitely an outsider, the foreign kid, the girl from Africa, and nobody let me forget it.
I mean, isn't it interesting though in your adult life, people probably think that's cool about you.
Yeah,
One of the most
yeah.
attractive things about you, learning about you is like, oh, you grew up somewhere else. Like that's so foreign in a good way. Like I want to you're cultured, like you have different experiences and that's something that's attractive as you get
Yeah. Well, and for me too, like I was so embarrassed to be from South Africa when I was little because kids made so much fun of me.
Yeah.
And now I am so proud of it and I embrace it. And like my dad, we have our traditional beef jerky is called biltong. And my friends always thought it was bull tongue, but it's biltong. And you can make it out of beef. You can make it out of venison. You can make it out of, now they do like all kinds of things like ostrich and everything too. But traditionally it's like venison or beef that they make it out of. And it's cured meat that you dry and like it hangs and it's beef jerky.
Mhm.
But my dad would have like in South Africa, you like walk into a deli or like a butcher and all the meat is just like hanging on the ceilings and it's air drying and it's cured.
Mhm.
And in America, obviously you're not walking into like a deli or butchery or butcher and seeing that. And so my dad in the wintertime would hang meat on the porch. And so he'd have like slabs of meat hanging on the porch. And then my friends would come over and I'd be so embarrassed that we have all this meat hanging and like the ceiling. And they'd be like, "What is that?" And my dad would be like, "The last friends who came over." And I'd be like, "Oh, Dad, that's so embarrassing." But now I'm like, so proud to give my friends a taste of biltong because my dad
Yeah,
to this
yeah.
day, now he has like a very modern like dehumidifier and like has his own little system of doing it. And of creating biltong, which is just part of who we are. And like whenever friends come over and I have some, I let them taste it, and I'm like so proud of it, and they're so excited to try something from South Africa. So it's just like when you're a little kid, it's just like I wish I could tell my younger self to like embrace my culture and that it's
Yes.
so cool to be from somewhere different. Because yeah, in your adult life, everybody's like, "You're from South Africa? That's so crazy. Tell me about it." And then my cousins are like, "No, you're American now."
I mean, do you have a chip on your shoulder at all from it? It doesn't seem like you do, but I just can't imagine that, like, feeling like such an outsider at a young age for a while wouldn't stay with you in some ways. Maybe more motivating
Yeah.
probably for you.
Well, now that you mention it, I'm like, I guess it makes so much sense. Maybe it does come from that. Yeah, I think like sometimes I feel like I just like sometimes feel different, I feel like I like don't always fit in, and I think that shows in my friends group too. I have a very small circle of friends that I call like my bestie besties. I have tons of like friends,
Sure.
but like my bestie besties to really get close to me, like I have a very small circle. And I think part of that is because maybe I have felt a little bit different and I have kind of been hesitant to let people in super close to seeing like me and my culture and my family. And that was one of the things that I loved so much about my husband is like he met my family and he was like, "I want to try all of your food and like I love your culture and like this is so cool." And like he totally embraced it. And I think that showed me as well, like to embrace things that are unique to me instead of being like, "Ooh, like that's what makes you different and an outsider, like you need to hide." But I think it's definitely stuck with me. It's probably just not something that I fully like looked into or like recognized.
Yeah, that's really cool that you met somebody that could bring that out in you though.
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
makes you more confident in yourself, not the opposite, where you
Yeah.
feel like you have to hide certain parts. So, that's amazing. Going back to when you took the leap to go full time on I'm sorry, I feel like I'm saying it wrong.
Mooi Social.
M
Mooi like toy.
Moy Social.
That's
Okay,
okay.
that helps me. Moy Social. Did the motivation for the business, like, I'm trying to it seems like a through line for you might be that, you wanna help other people feel good in their own brand and build their own business maybe faster than the rate that they could do on their own, and, like, you've cracked the code for social and you know what's working, what's not, but what is the driver? Like, what type of clients do you like to take on? What are you trying to help them feel or achieve in their business?
That's a great question. So I love working with luxury brands. I love pretty things. So I like working with passionate entrepreneurs as well, people who are really invested in their own brand. Because for me, the cracking of the code is working hand in hand with somebody who wants to see their brand succeed. Because I can't do it on my own, and my team can't do it without you. So at the end of the day, I like working with brands in the luxury space. I like working with service based businesses over product based businesses, mostly because they're a little bit easier to market. My husband is one of those exceptions. He has cars for sale, but it's not like, coming from HSN where we had like thousands of products for
Yeah,
sale
yeah,
and a
yeah, that's a
true
lot.
like e-com website. Those are not typically my clients. I do like to work with service-based businesses and local businesses, but at the core of that, businesses who are truly invested in wanting to grow their brands because that's only going to allow us to do even more for them. Um, like I mentioned in the beginning, there is no marketing agency that shows up for you 7 days a week, 24 hours.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's just like, how can we partner together hand in hand to bring you to those next steps that you're really looking to achieve for your company? And, in that process, we also share our process with these business owners and they get to learn so much. And then they get to give that over to their team members and then they get to grow so much and learn so much. So I think that's kind of like the core of the juice, is like working with people who want to succeed.
Yeah, that makes sense. So take us back to when you were going full time and what was your headspace like? Like, what was your life when you're like, okay, I'm doing it. I'm quitting everything else and I'm just going to go for this? Like, paint the picture for what your life was like.
Oh, I was so scared, man. I was not ready. Like I'll never be ready. I'll never be ready to have kids. I'll never be ready to like quit my
No one
job,
ever is.
And gosh, that probably goes back to also like leaving from South Africa and moving here. I needed stability and security in my life. And like leaving my corporate job felt like I was taking away all stability, all
Yeah.
security from myself. And so I had been saving my money from my side hustle for all of my corporate career. Like I was just like stashing a savings account away for that day when it happened, when I was ready to quit because I was like, how am I supposed to quit? Like for some reason, I think I felt like I was not going to make a single penny when I quit my corporate job. And like even up till 2 years ago, I never really like I was making money. I was making more money than I was making in corporate. And I still felt like as soon as I quit my corporate job, like no money was going to come in. Yeah, and now I'm like, "Why did I think that?" Like, I still have the same clients from back then, now I have even more clients from, since then, and I'm like, it just was such a scary leap for me personally. I have so many friends and, like, including Haley. Haley, like, jumps in and she's like, "I'm gonna figure it out while I go." Like, me, I'm like, I need to, like, really make sure, like, I need to have cross all my T's, dot all my I's, and so I think I was probably in corporate way too long. And I was so, like, burnt out and so ready to start, and so finally, it was when I was, like, just consistently making more than I was pulling in corporate that I was like, "Alright, like, I think that I'm probably safe enough now to go ahead and start my own business," and I remember just, like, the premeditation even of, like, writing my
Resignation.
notice of like, "Hey," and, like, I gave him a good solid, like, 5 weeks. I was like, "Listen, I'm gonna be leaving, and, like, it's gonna be in the new year." And then, ironically, like, right after I quit my corporate job, I got into a car accident that left me, without my right hand for 6 months of my first year in business, which was, like, really hard to go through as an entrepreneur who was also, like, I think physically it was really hard, but mentally, I was working on, like, really big projects, like, traveling every week, going everywhere, and, just doing the most, and I was really independent. I did a lot for myself. I had a great team to rely on as well in corporate, and then I come to, like, entrepreneurship, and now I'm in surgeries and unable to use my hand. Like, my husband was shaving my legs for me, he was brushing my hair for me, he was cooking my food for me, he was cutting my food for me, like, I couldn't do anything for myself, and let alone, like, work full time. So I went from this, like, really big, busy lifestyle to, like, half of that and then even less. And so mentally, I was on this, like, entrepreneurial roller coaster, and I think my first year of business was really figuring that out, like, and it taught me a lot about myself. It taught me a lot about myself that I probably would have never learned if I didn't go through that, and that's something I can look back at now and be like, "That's why this happened to me," because it taught me so much about, you know, me having to leave my control and allow other people to help me, and that was something that I really struggled with up until, like, I had to be forced to, like, have my husband literally cut my food and feed me. I was like, "Okay, this is" he had to, like, tie my shoelaces, and I was like, "I can't do anything without somebody right now," and then, obviously, on the other side of that for the business too, like, I had to rely on a lot of people to come into the business and help me, and then I realized how, like, unequipped my business was. I had been building the business all these years, but I had been, like, servicing clients, not really, like, spending enough time, like, actually building the business foundation, and so I was in a tricky spot there, and since then, I've, like, figured it out, but yeah, it was, like, a really, odd start to entrepreneurship and, definitely a learning experience.
So did you have employees working or a team working with you before the car accident, or did you have to scramble and find people to help you when that happened?
So I had one person who was helping me post, like, for
Yeah.
clients. I need everybody needs help posting, so she was, like, helping me post, but, I think that's another part that people don't talk about enough is, like, when you're starting the business, like, you're probably doing everything on your own unless you have, like, a ton of funding or just desire to pay other people to do things for you, and so I was, like, the graphic designer, I was the web designer, I was the social media manager, I was the account manager, I was the project manager, like, I was the content creator, I was the videographer, I was the editor, I was the photographer, and still to this day, I dabble in all of those things, but, I only had one person helping me, and she was, like, very new to it as well, so it was a big, like, learning I spent, like, most of my time training her, and it was yeah, I just realized that I was so alone in this, and some people reached out and offered their help, but it was also, like, I was still going through that, like, allow people to help you phase, and now I'm like, yeah, now I have a team of 5, and my team is like, "Christine, what's on your plate today? Give it over to me so I could help you, like, let's get it out of your head, and I can work on this for you," and so, that's still something that I think I struggle with today is just, like, allowing people to help me, and then also on the flip side of that, like equipping them to help me the way that I want them to help me. Because in the beginning, when I first started like getting people to help me, I'd be like, I need this done, and then they do it. And I'd be like, that's not what I needed, like I needed it like this. And so I've also just grown in like how I'm able to equip my team with like different processes and procedures and ways of doing. And that's really good with like quality control and like in the world of social media marketing and management and influencer marketing management, like you need to like have your T's crossed and your I's dotted. You can't just like it's not a free for all when you're representing another brand. So I had to just like make sure that I put my processes into place and equip my team with like being able to do the job in the best way possible, the way that I would want something done.
Yeah. I mean, to overcome that kind of challenge in the very first few weeks of being full-time entrepreneur, it probably felt a little bit like, okay, once you're out of that, you can tackle anything, but did you after that, after you made it through that and things were operating more smoothly, did you feel like the wind was in your sails or were there challenges that you overcame? You said that it made you learn a lot about yourself,
Yeah.
but were there other challenges that popped up in the early days of being full-time with Mooi Social?
Absolutely. And there's still challenges to
Yeah.
this day. It's like ever evolving. But I think for me, a hard part was finding a good team. And that was something I let go of in corporate. I had a team member to do everything and not everything. I did my role, but like if I needed the web developer team to do like a really cool sweepstakes landing page, like they would do that, and I would brief them on what I have available to me, and then they would do that. If I needed the video team to fly out to Atlanta to go film Neo Studio, they would do that. If I needed the interior design team, everybody had their role and they were all like specialized in that role. And I think the hardest part for me was like finding those same really highly qualified, skilled people for my company. And so I went through a lot of turnover and to the point where I was like, am I a good boss? Like I was like questioning my own like value as a boss. I'm like, is it a me problem or is it a team problem? And that first year was really hard because I was just like going through training and it takes like 3 months to train somebody. And then after those 3 months, I'd be like, this is not like working out? And so then I would like have to train somebody new for the role. And like I finally have a good team right now where I'm like so happy that we're all going into this year together. But, that wasn't until a couple months ago. And, I had a really big I think the biggest mindset shift I had was I used to work for my clients and now I work for my team and my team works for my clients. Like I used to just be like client focused, like, everything is for the client. We need to make sure that the clients are happy. And like, I don't care if we're working late, like the client needs to be happy. Now it's like, all right, guys, the client asked this, nobody jump. Let's protect our peace. Let's protect our space. Let's make sure that we have everything that we need to equip you guys to do your job properly, or we need to say no to this, right? Where before it was just like whatever the clients wanted, like there was no boundary and like wanted to make them happy. And then I think my biggest shift has been like now realizing that as long as I'm investing in my team, like the clients are happy, and the clients are well taken care of. And like having that shift of like showing up for my team because I was like so much in silo for so long, that I was like, oh my gosh, now I have to like show up and like make sure everybody has what they need. And like, I think that's something I still struggle with today. Like, I feel like I can always be a better boss for my team. But yeah, that's been like my biggest shift to this year is just like realizing that like being team focused is the best thing that you could do for your
Yeah.
business.
A lot of people tell us that it's challenging to find the right team and to find people that you can trust as much as you can trust yourself. Do you have a process or like tips for interviewing to find the right people, or like how do you even go about it's one thing you can only get to know somebody so much
Yeah.
during like a few interview conversations, right? Like how do you approach that, or what have you learned along the way?
Yeah. So, one of my favorite questions to ask is where do you see yourself in 5 years? Because it shows me where their passion is, right? And I actually have a global team. I have team members in South Africa. And that is really where I found like my passion folks, right? But for me, that's something that I realized right away. I was like, I need to start making sure that the people that I'm hiring are people who are like live, breathe, eat, like die hard social media passionate people or influencer marketing passionate people. Like passion comes first, skill can be trained. And that is really where I stand with my team. I have the youngest girl on my team is 20, and this is her first like job, and she started off not having any experience in social media marketing or content creation. And she is just a racehorse, like came out running and is doing such a fabulous job and is so open to like constructive feedback and learning. And she's just a sponge. She's just soaked it all up and has been like just really passionate about it. And I think that's really what I look for when I'm hiring is like, if they have that drive, then you can train them. And that's been like over and over again proven to me as well. Where I think in the past I've hired people that have just been like a convenient fit and
Mhm.
not necessarily like that passion fit. But yeah, I do have a team or some team members in South Africa. And if you guys are curious about hiring people overseas for your company, my accountant told me about this company called Deal, Deel. And basically, they're like the middleman because I was like, oh my gosh, because my cousin, I went back to South Africa in June and my cousin has an agency over there, a marketing agency. And we like reconnected as
Yeah.
adults and we were like, wow, what a like synergist relationship here. We should start working together. And that's exactly what happened. And so he actually did an ad. I was looking for a paid media specialist. And so they did like a recruiting ad for me. They did the recruiting. I hopped on the calls. We filtered through the candidates and stuff. And I called my accountant. And I was like, "What do we do here? I like want to hire people overseas." And they were the ones who told me about Deal. And Deal has allowed me so many more opportunities to look at not just like the U.S. for hiring, but people all over. And like for me, it's just I want to find people who are really passionate and who are really highly skilled, or really passionate on the entry level, and we can train them to be really highly skilled in that niche. But that opened up like a whole new world of opportunities for me, and I highly recommend that you guys check it out. Deal is amazing. It's been like my game changer.
And I think I've heard of Deal. Do they handle figuring out like the legalities of paying people
Yeah,
overseas, and they kind of handle like all of it for you, right?
all of it. Yeah, so you pay a monthly fee. I think I pay like $55 per contractor, per payment. Or maybe I forgot the logistic, but it's like $50 a month per contractor, and then I pay my contractors, like, once a month so that I'm not, like, getting charged, like, biweekly $50. But yeah, so it's been, they handle all the legal, all the compliance that you need to make sure that you're, like, checked the box in, and, yeah, it's been really, really easy, and it's streamlined for them as well. Like, they get their money really fast. It's, like, same day deposit on their end, and you're like legally and and tax wise okay here in the US as well because Deal is a company that's like the middleman. So they are like the US based company that did all the
Got
work,
it.
all the legwork to like ensure that they can work with other people around the globe. And that's something that I've been like, I have a corporate client and I've been like, you need to hire influencers overseas. They have such cool content over there. Look at these cool like UGC creators in like Germany or like in Paris or whatever, and, like, this is why I love having my own business because if I wanted to contract influencers overseas or hire team members in South Africa, I can do it, but of course, corporate, there's like so many different like, oh no, we even though we're a global company, we can't hire influencers overseas. What would that look like? And I've been like, well, we can hire them through our company and then you can pay us so that you guys don't have to worry about it. But like it's the possibilities are there, and like it's at your fingertips. You just have to be able to say yes and do it. So I've been like trying to get some of my corporate clients to kind of see that side of the world that we as entrepreneurs and business owners get to dabble in. But that's been something that's really cool and like recent for me. That's been like the last 6 months that I've been like in this world of like global global recruitment. Yeah. But then also on the recruiting side, just like making sure you really filter people out by maybe giving them a little task, like for good candidates, they're gonna want to do the work for you. They're gonna want to send you a cover letter. They're gonna want to their resume is going to look really good. They're going to want to do the extra work for you if you have a fun task or assignment. And looking back to when I started at this small marketing agency over 10 years ago, my task for them, like I came in and they had me do this like flip cup task, which was like super creative and really hard. And they just had this really big, like long onboarding process before I even got hired, or like recruiting process before I even got hired. And that should have stuck with me, you'd think, but I think I lost that when I was in a position of like I need help right now. I was like, whoever can help me for convenience, like come and help me. You've got experience, great. I don't have to train you as much. That is not the case. Social media management is not the same depending on like if you have social media management experience or influencer marketing experience with somebody that you've worked with before, that doesn't mean that it's going to be the same for like the company that you're working with. And for me, like I'm meticulous by trade, like everything is like very much like type A. And so I have my processes, I have my way of doing, and I train my team the exact way that I would do something. So they get Loom videos from me like off the hizzy. Like every day I'm like, all right, guys, this is how I would repost this Instagram story. This is the font that you need to use. This is this brand font. This is this brand's font. This is because we even have like native Instagram story fonts for our clients so that we all use consistent ones across the board because I'm not posting Instagram stories for all our clients every day. Like my team is, but sometimes I will, and that way we can just stay super consistent. So even if it's like little 3-minute videos like that, I'm like always sending my team stuff now just so that I can ensure that we have that quality control.
You're on it. You're
Thank
super
you.
on it.
I appreciate that because if you ask me, I'll be like, I'm a hot mess.
Yeah, I mean, from the outside, you're super on it.
Thank
You
you.
shared with us your why and your motivation to do what you do and hustle so hard is to give back to your mom and kind of thank her for the opportunity that she gave you guys. But what are you, do you, does anything stand out to you that you're most proud of that you've already accomplished?
Gosh, I mean, I guess like being in business 2 years, like just that alone, I'm always like centered by gratitude and I'm just like grateful every single day that I get to wake up and work. Um Coming from a country where there's not a lot of opportunity, I moved here and saw that there's so much opportunity and I am just like impressed by myself every day that I'm still like running a business, and that now I have a team that I'm like managing and that I still have clients who like want to work with me. Sometimes I'm like, why do people hire me? So I think I definitely am just like proud of still being in business, being profitable, and I think that not enough entrepreneurs pat themselves on the back for something as simple as like, well, you've been like you're still in business. Many people start a new business and they go out of business very soon or they change direction and now they're like, yeah, I was working on that, but now I'm working on this. And so, I'm just proud of myself for staying consistent all these years, even though I haven't been like officially in business for longer than 2 years. Like I've been doing this for my whole adult life, like since I was like 18, I've been doing this. I'm 28 now. And it's just like I look back now and I'm like, wow, like you've been doing the thing for a while. And even though it doesn't feel like I'm doing the thing, I also think that the more I work with new team members and like talk to people about my expertise, I realize that like what I do is a specialty and like my experience isn't everybody else's, and like sometimes I get frustrated because I'm like, how do you not know like to just like lower the exposure when you're taking a photo, and it's like the worst when I take other people's photos or get content of other people. It's like they look like 10 stars and then I'm like, okay, now get my photo. And I'm like, "Oh, I'll just delete that. But I used to get like frustrated, but now I'm like, you know what? How can I get mad at people for doing something that they're not doing? Like I do this every single day. I've taken a million content like me, like even last year, I think I posted on Instagram the other day, I had like 80,000 videos on just my iPhone from last year on just one of my iPhones, you know? And so I was like, there's a lot of content that gets captured on my side of the world. And I'm just like proud of staying consistent, even though I feel inconsistent in other areas of the business. Like during my car accident last year, I didn't show up at all on social media. I was like very much taking a mental break, very much like I just like went inside my own little cave and like had to heal mentally. I was like a lot of trauma that I went through, you know, like mental trauma, physical trauma, yes. And the physical trauma, if you've broken bones in like a trauma incident, like y'all know that it is the most painful thing. Like you don't sleep for the first like 2 months. And like it was just like really, really painful to go through that physically. But like mentally, you know, it takes a toll on you. And I had to take a step back. And that was something that I don't think I would have ever done. I don't think I would have ever just taken a step back and been like, you know what? It's okay to go slow. It's okay to go softer now because I'll go harder in something else, you know?
Do you feel like most of the healing that you had to go through from the accident was because of the actual circumstance and letting go of control? Or do you think it just brought up things that were always there? It just forced you to face them?
I think a little bit of both, honestly, because I just, you know, I was at my highest high in corporate. Like I was like working with like Neo and like all these celebrities and like flying everywhere and doing all these cool things. And like I was making all this money because I was making double income, you know? And I was just, I'm a social girl too. So I have to be like out and about and talking to people. And then I went to like, the lowest point of my life all of a sudden where I had like no coworkers, right? No team. And I love to like dress up. So like even just like getting dressed for work every day was like a highlight of my life. And I was in a tube top for like 3 months because I couldn't put like sleeves on or anything or over my arm. And so I couldn't like I just didn't feel like myself. And I was in this place of being so alone. And like I don't think any of my friends had gone through any like traumatic like, car accident, like,
Yeah.
bone breaking, like, experience like that, so nobody, like, really knew how to show up for me as a friend either, and I think that was hard for me too. You know, I, like, had my husband and, like, me and he was my fiancé then, we were getting married that year, so I think, like, mentally, I just was at, like, the peak of, like, happiness, and even though I was burnt out, I was just, like, still, like, living this, like, dream life, and then I just went to, like, the lowest low, you know? And I was so, so alone and so mentally and physically just like in so much trauma. And I think that ended up throughout the year, like resurfacing things that maybe had always been there, you know, like insecurities about myself. Like I knew that I was a little bit of a control freak, right? My mom's a little bit of a control freak, model behavior. I'm a little bit of a control freak. I got the type A from somebody and, you know, giving up that control and also, you know, I was very independent my whole life and like having to rely on somebody else to do things for me was just like really, really tough to like face, you know? And I'm still going through that. Like it's like an ongoing process where I'm like, it's okay. It's okay if it's not done perfectly or like the way that I want it. It's okay. We still got the job done. Let's move on, you know?
Yeah. Well, you're crushing it. I mean,
Thank
it's
you.
very inspirational.
So are you guys. I
Thank
love
you.
just chatting with you guys and listening to everybody else in the show. You guys have had some awesome guests, and I'm excited to be a part of one of them.
I'm so glad you're here. So, on that note, what anti-gatekeeping advice do you have for somebody that hasn't taken the leap yet, but they do want to start a social media agency or do something in a similar realm to you, but they maybe don't have the confidence to start yet or they don't know where to start?
I would say start with somebody that you really trust, like a close friend or a business owner that might be like not a family member, but like a close enough family friend of yours that will allow you to practice, right? Because practice makes perfect and nobody starts and does everything the right way. So I would say start with somebody who's going to allow you to mess up and also give you some feedback to improve. I think that's been foundational for me is having people who, like, have really, allowed me to, like, learn along the way because, like, everybody has to learn, and I'm still learning, you know? We're still doing new things for the company. Like, this year, we're taking on, like, Google ads, meta ads, email marketing, like next level, not just newsletters. Like we just joined Klaviyo and like now all of our clients are going to Klaviyo. And I'm like, why haven't we been on Klaviyo before? But I would say, start with somebody that everybody needs social media marketing and management nowadays. So start with somebody that you can trust who will let you do a little bit of messing up. And then that could be your practice client. Take that client that you're practicing with, create a proposal, create your service offers. That's going to be your first service offer package that you get to go back at 10 years from now and be like, wow, this was what it looked like back in the day. But that's going to give you that playing board. You'll get to just practice with that person. And that is like, and you'll also have an accountability buddy, right? Because now somebody relies on you. And that's another thing is if you're like starting a social media marketing agency and you're only doing stuff for yourself, like you're the only one relying on yourself. So start with somebody that might, and maybe you're not getting a lot of money. Maybe you're just getting a couple $100, right? But it's good enough for the learning experience.
Yeah, that's great advice. That makes a lot of sense. It's a little
Awesome.
more approachable too. Like it's
Yeah.
not so scary.
Yeah. And I have some like tactical advice too. This is my like 2024 advice for anybody who's filming on their phone. Just show up and you can do these two little tips to have better content super easily. The first is tap on your screen if you have an iPhone and you're going to lower that exposure just a tiny bit, like negative zero point 0.3. And that's going to allow you to not be complete in like brightness,
Oh wow.
like for
Like it's like a
headlights of
little
a
filter
car or
kind of.
like, yeah, it kind of adds like just this lower exposure filter. But
Okay.
not just that, it also allows you to put text on screen when you're sharing things to stories or to as a reel without it being like a whitewashed background. You already have that native edit already in that when you went to go film. And there's actually an exposure lock now on iPhone that you could use. If you're an Android user, I'm sorry, I have zero tips for you. But
Get an iPhone. That's the tip.
if you're an Android user, get an iPhone for content creation in 2024. But the retention rate for text on screen is gonna just keep people reading way longer than no text on screen. But that little hack alone is gonna save you, and it will elevate your content so much if you're like filming in bright daylight or filming with like a bunch of lighting, or even if you're in a restaurant, and you're like wanting to take a photo of that LED sign, but every single LED sign that you're taking a photo of is like super like flushed out. Just lower that exposure on your iPhone, and it's gonna make your content look so much better this year. And this is a timeless tip, but it still needs to be reshared. Just wipe your camera lens before you start filming. That is it. Thanks.
Okay. So where can listeners find you on social, connect with you, follow on your journey, all of the things?
You guys can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, all the above. It's Mooi Social, MOOI Social.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here to meet Silicon. This was such a fun conversation.
Oh, thank you guys for having me. I can't wait to see the episode go live and listen in on all the other ones that you guys have coming up.